Hi, everybody. Welcome to Topline Spotlight. It's your hosts, Sam Jacobs. I'm joined by Asad Zaman, CEO of Sales Talent Agency, and AJ Bruno, CEO of QuotaPath. And we've got Jenny Podewils, the co-CEO of Leapsome, on the show. And we're going to dive in on one of her toughest challenges. Jenny, welcome to Topline Spotlight.
Really excited to be here with you today.
We are excited to have you. So the first thing we need to know before we dive in is a little bit about Leapsome. I know a little bit about the company, but in your words, tell us, what does Leapsome do? What's the problem that you solve? And just a little bit of the origin story of where the company emerged from.
Awesome. Very happy to tackle that. So maybe starting with the story. Both my co-founder and I were involved in scaling different technology companies, but also helping bigger companies succeed. And the problem we kept running into was making sure during phases of rapid growth or rapid change, how do we make sure a company stays aligned? How do we make sure employees can perform at their best? And how do we make sure we really build these environments that can enable peak performance? And that's ultimately what we tackle. So Leapsome is an AI-powered people platform that helps build really high-performing team and drive HR excellence. And ultimately, what we see is like the people are, for most of like technology companies, for a lot of other companies, the basis for their business success. And that's ultimately really what we help build. And we work with small startups, but also big technology companies like a Monday.com, and also more traditional companies like Mercedes-Benz. We've been around for 8 years. We have over 1,500 customers, mainly in the US and Europe.
And when you say, is it an HRIS? Is it an employee management system? Are you running payroll? Tell us about like the different pieces of functionality that the Leapsome product encompasses.
Yes, love diving into that. So ultimately, we started being very much focused on modern performance management, OKRs, goal management, as well as employee engagement. And ultimately, we have all the tools now that really help with the employee journey, all the way from helping effective onboarding with effective work streams, work automations, helping with like the clarification between a manager and an employee, what's expected of them, helping in onboarding, for example, in sales organizations to get reps up to productivity as quickly as possible, and then helping with the performance management over the course of an employee journey, having the data and the actual insights or actionable insights from surveys to improve organizations. And then everything that also drives manager effectiveness, all the way to an AI co-pilot, for example. We do offer an HRS. We've shipped that in Europe first. That's also going to come to the US in the future.
Wonderful. And then the topic of Spotlight tends to be a challenge that you've recently solved. So walk us through one of the most important business problems you've solved in the last 12 to 24 months.
It's actually directly related to the story I just told you of like where we started and what we also now are shipping and doing now. So we initially started building this category for people enablement, performance management, engagement, OKRs, learning, onboarding, manager effectiveness. And during the times of like when we started the company 2017, I would say all the way into 2022, that really emerged or seemed to emerge as like an actual category. So we were able to really effectively sell this alongside HRS to customers using all different kinds of HRS systems. In the market, that's a lot tougher now. We do see more consolidation challenges and companies just really reviewing their tech stack. And while we're still growing really strong, there's still pockets of buyers that truly understand why that people enablement system has an own right next to a broader HR platform. I think just the size of the market you can sell that into has shrunken a bit. So we did actually take the bold decision about 1.5 years ago to build out a wider platform and also like to dive into that HRS space. It is a very competitive space. At the same time, we also see huge opportunity given our strengths and huge outperformance of other platforms on that people enablement side to actually consolidate in that direction. And we have really, really good initial, we brought the product to market earlier this year in an early access program, predominantly focused at Europe right now. And we see really, really good first signs that that hypothesis actually works. And so that was a bold move. We also were in the fortunate position to have the cash and the optionality to actually execute that strategy. And we're really excited for the opportunities that brings to us in the future.
That's fascinating. I was listening to the folks at Lattice talk about a similar lesson that they learned, and they had to go into the HRS space as well because of that. It's a really busy category, HRIS. You've got these large incumbents that have the pros and cons of being the large incumbent, and then you have companies like yourselves and Lattice jumping in. How do you find the gap that you can run after, that little bit of white space? Is that the exercise, or is it that there won't be that type of white space and we just need to build something that net is better than all these other options, and that's the only way to win in that space?
Yeah. I mean, I think the opportunity for us really arises from the fact that, I mean, everybody has to run HR processes and nobody necessarily loves HR software. And I think that's grounded to some extent also in a lot of HR software having been built for HR administrators, right?
Yeah.
And the user, the manager, is kind of like almost like a bit of an afterthought. Whereas we've taken a very, very different approach. Like our purpose as the company is to make work fulfilling. And we've really started build our product from the vantage point of how do we generate true alignment in an organization? How do we help employees understand what's expected of them? How do we guide employees through their journey as an employee, through their journey as a manager? So we've always had this focus on the manager and the individual contributor persona. And ultimately, what that means is if you build the platform this way, it's like you actually build a platform that drives higher adoption and higher engagement because it actually delivers true value to the end user. There's also a huge benefit of that to the HR persona because HR people don't like policing the rest of the organization to, I don't know, update their information or put in this or that. And if you actually have an interface where people truly interact with it on a very regular basis, like all of these things kind of happen on the side in a much more easier way. And I think the second big change comes, we're now having all these opportunity to leverage generative AI to truly make our lives easier. And if we look at HR teams, they've been massively cut through the past few years. They're often cut even more than other teams, so disproportionately more than other teams in the organizations. Then there's a lot of pressure. So if we can make their lives easier, that's a huge benefit. If we look at managers' jobs have become increasingly more intense through the pandemic, moving into like hybrid remote settings without necessarily always getting all the support they needed. Now managers are asked to achieve a lot more with less. The span of controls have risen, the pressure on managers has risen. So what we are doing, for example, is our AI co-pilot is making managers' lives to manage actually easier, right? So for example, when you provide feedback, performance feedback, you actually have sort of an initial starting point through the AI co-pilot to help you generate good feedback. Or if you have a tricky one-on-one with one of your sellers or one of your direct reports, like you can actually use the coach to prepare for the conversation, to have that coach by your side to actually be well prepared. And I think the advantage of doing that in a tool like Leapsome versus like ChatGPT is we have the contextual data. We understand the goals. We understand what you're working with your employees. We know the right permissions, like which data is available to whom, and we can make data truly actionable. Because, like, if you look at a heat map or some data, like it's not easy to understand for everyone. So we can actually help people interpret the data and determine the next best action based on this data. And I think that's the power of a system like ours that's just very differently built from the entire architecture and product philosophy than like a traditional HR system.
I think given that your company is so global and you say HR, like there's a standardization, but obviously that there's a lot of complexity. And I know you have a go-to-market team here in the US, and there's probably folks around the world. How do you, you're talking about Leapsome, the tool, but how do you manage your own company in this way and create that world? Because that sounds very overwhelming and complex. It can get really complex quickly.
Yeah. And I think the level of complexity for us is really step changed with the move into HRS, because on the people enablement side, performance management, engagement surveys, OKRs still work fairly similarly across like the world, whereas on the HRS side, absence, payroll, etc., that just becomes a lot more complex. So I think we're also adding a lot of complexity that we're now learning to adequately manage. So I think we're also still in the process of further evolving there. But I think historically, what really has been behind our success is honestly like eating our own dog food or drinking your own champagne. Maybe that one sounds nicer. And it's truly building an organization that around a strong purpose. Like people join Leapsome because they want to really work on solving this big challenge. We have always focused very much on like really having very, very strong alignment, like clarity at what are the most important objectives, OKRs we work on as a company in a given period of time, making sure people know what their specific role is and ultimately driving these forward, making sure people have like a lot of clarity as to what is expected of them, how they can grow, supporting managers in their development. So it's like truly building a really talent dense team that's very focused and very much sort of moving in sync. And also like the way that's really unlocked that for us is like we've always been focused on scaling with the leanest team possible. So part of our history, and I didn't mention this yet, is actually we were bootstrapped beyond 10 million ARR. And we then raised a big round with inside partners in New York, so top tier investor, amazing partners.
Which, by the way, Jenny, I don't know if you know this, Katie Boulard, I think, was part of your board. She was also part of ours. I'm an insight company as well, so we share that as well.
Yeah, no, I think they're amazing.
Yeah.
And I think we, right after taking funding, I think there was a slight period of time where we also maybe diverged from our own principle of like staying really lean for a few quarters, and we learned the hard way that that's not the best way for us to scale actually. And now we're much more focused again, have really clearly written down our operating principles again, so everybody really knows what they're buying into, how we work, how we operate. And I think this is really something that's at the core of enabling us to move at the speed we're moving and get the things done we get done.
One of the challenges a lot of founders have right now is that they have learned these lessons and become more efficient in a down market. And there's this premium on growth versus margin that's always in the market, and it evolves based on the state of the economy. And so the premium on growth had gone down, the premium on margin, hence efficiency, had gone up. That's going to shift in favor of growth a little bit. And a lot of founders are concerned that I'm going to lose a little bit of that control I had. Like the market force is going to create almost a little bit more inefficiency in how we run businesses and the decisions we make. Sometimes it's competitive pressure. My competitor is throwing all this fuel on fire to capture the market. I've got to push a little bit harder than I would like to. How are you thinking about maintaining these lessons? How do you, and you, from the HR space, you probably have a good view on this. How do you really hold on to lessons at a time where it might be harder to hold on to it, which is an improving market?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the difference between sort of the next sort of phase of, I think, growth that's heading towards us versus the past is like, I think we do have a different level. We've always had the ability to automate, right? But I think now we have much more powerful technology at our fingertips. So I think there's going to be a certain decoupling of really radical growth strategies and necessarily like hiring or employee growth in organizations. Yeah. And I think there's this interesting paradigm that Zapier also seems to be using, which is, I think, bot, borrow, build, buy. So whenever you want to hire someone, like ask yourself, like, is this actually something that maybe could be automated in a really smart way? And I do believe, like, I'm
That's so interesting, Jenny. What do you think is the downstream implication of that on the world of HR? So there was this news article 2 weeks ago about how Microsoft is having to now talk about how if you buy our AI tools, it will genuinely save you from hiring more people. Like there's this connection to less human capital because of AI, and they were kind of staying away from that value positioning, and now they have to lean into it because customers are at the point where they're saying, if I'm spending this money, realistically, efficiency means less people. Can I actually achieve that? And so we've heard about what's possible in engineering, what's possible in marketing, etc. Very curious, what do you think is possible in HR where, let's say, a company at a certain size had a 10-person HR team? Can they get by with like 3 people in AI now in the near future? Like, do you see that happening?
I mean, I would actually say I wouldn't limit it to any department, neither engineering nor HR. I think this is actually something that spans the entire organization, like how we market, right? Like what a marketer can achieve, what a salesperson can achieve, what ratio of SDRs to AEs actually still makes sense. So I think this actually spans the entire organization. It definitely also spans the HR department, just because you can automate processes, you can source candidates much faster. So I think it's just a big productivity lever across ultimately, really, honestly, every team of the organization. I think support is something where we've seen really good applications of generative AI to really truly like level up the productivity. And I think I also like I'm employee centric, right? I don't want to get rid of people. Like I love working with smart, talented individuals, but I think it just generates a lot different opportunity for impact for every person. And I mean, ultimately, I think we have so many big challenges we need to solve as a society. So if we can deploy the talent we have across even more topics we can work on and solve and tackle, I think that's my optimistic view. But I think there's also going to be certain tasks in every job that are going to be able to be fully automated. And I think really that element of having a co-pilot to managers to really help managers be better managers, provide better feedback, like have better hard conversations, know how to best sort of motivate, engage their team. I think that's also one of the huge like applications that's going to bring true huge business value to companies, whether that's a sales leader or an HR leader or an engineering leader. I think that's also like a use case I'm very excited about.
I love that. Jenny, we're about at the end of our time together. What we like to do at the very end is get some inspiration, follow the breadcrumb trail a little bit. So, what's an interesting? It could be a book, it could be a podcast, it could be an event. What's something? And it could be a mentor or a former boss. But what's an idea we should know about that's influenced you in the last couple of weeks or months?
So I'm a mom of 2, pregnant with number 3, so I feel like I actually don't have that much time to read anymore these days. So it's usually just podcasts at this stage. I honestly really enjoy Hard Fork from the New York Times. That's probably one of the ones I managed to somehow squeeze into the days with everything going on. But yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind.
Hard Fork's great, very funny.
Very funny.
Yeah, good. It's great content. Jenny, if folks want to reach out to you, maybe they want to buy Leapsome. Maybe they want to become a customer. It's Q4. We want to help you close. Although when people listen to this, it'll be Q1. But you'll need to close deals in Q1, I would imagine. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
So definitely either LinkedIn, Jenny Podewils, Leapsome, or also like happy for folks to reach out to me via email. That's jenny.podewils, Podewils at leapsome.com. And yeah, let me know what you think and what your thoughts are. I'm happy to connect.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for being a guest on Topline Spotlight. We hope to see you in New Orleans at the CEO Summit for Pavilion. But if not, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you so much.